I'm George Buswell. I'm on the board of directors here at the Maine Resource Recovery. I've met most of the people in the room from one time or another over the years. I don't know why we're going to have a question and answer session on extended producer responsibility. I think the name itself pretty much answers all of our questions, wouldn't you? But maybe not. Maybe there'll be a few questions pop up before the day is over. But I'll let each of our professionals introduce themselves, their volunteer help, and they're connected somehow with the EPR, and we'll learn that as we go. We have the representative here who actually helped write the bill or sponsored the bill. I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll go from here.
Thank you. Kind of want to stand up. I don't know, it just feels funny because the space arrangement. I'm Representative Nicole Grahowski, and I serve the city of Ellsworth and the town of Trenton in the House of Representatives. This is my second term, and I serve on the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. So I spend a lot of time thinking about energy and internet and even wastewater, drinking water, et cetera. But I moonlight over in the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, working on waste management issues when I get a chance. So it's accurate. I am the lead, I was the lead sponsor of the bill that we're here to discuss today, now a law. And really thrilled for the opportunity to try to answer your questions, especially around the why did we do this, and hopefully the DEP and others can help with the how are we going to do it questions that we're still figuring out. But just really excited, and also want to give a major shout out to that committee, the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, to my lead co-sponsor, Senator Rick Bennett, and to the DEP and the executive branch for really working hard on getting the details right the best we could for our municipalities, for our small businesses, and really for the benefit of Maine taxpayers and our environment. So I'll leave it to you guys, and then we'll come back, I guess, to more info.
Hi, I'm Brian Beneski. I'm the head of the product stewardship unit at the department. I've been there for almost 2 years now, but I came in, I've got 32 years with the department. I've spent the 30 with remediation. So I'm relatively new to the product stewardship gig, but we've got this great law, the product stewardship law, which we'll talk about more in the discussions, but that's to, basically put a fee on the producers of packaging to provide funding for municipalities to help them with their packaging waste handling costs. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. We get more of the details with the discussion. So that's me.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Draper. I'm the solid waste director for Aroostook Waste Solutions in Aroostook County. We operate a regional recycling program and a couple of landfills. And I was one of the municipalities, or one of the municipal entities that testified in support of the new law. And now most interested in how we're going to figure out how to implement this so that it works for municipalities, so that it provides the benefits that we hope it will provide. And we'll see how that goes over the next couple of years. So, and from that standpoint, for those of you who do represent municipalities here in this discussion today, I think there's a lot of opportunity here for maybe the first opportunity for some input from you folks on how we think this might work, how this might work, and how it might look in the future. So.
I feel like that's a question directed toward me in a way, since I started it. Well, I want to say that, yes, Maine is the first state to pass an EPR for packaging law. So yes, congratulations, Maine. Oregon did follow suit about a month later with a similar law. And so we can certainly learn with them, I think, in the rulemaking. But what's important to know is that over 40 places worldwide already have these laws in effect, and some have had them in effect for over 30 years. So there is a great body of work out there to draw from and see what has worked well, what has worked less well. I know that Ontario, for instance, is in the process of totally modernizing their program for better outcomes. So we do have a lot of opportunity here to create something that works for our unique ecosystem in waste management, but we also have a lot of people that we can learn from. And I think that's something that really gave me the information I needed to advocate with my colleagues and with so many people that were working to pass this law, was this idea that, okay, Maine, we know how to do extended producer responsibility. We already have a bottle bill. We have really successful programs for e-waste, plenty of other things that you could list. I think there's 10 of them, 9 or 10 different EPR programs. And this is just looking at packaging, and packaging is 40% of our waste stream. So if we can tackle this, then that is really getting after a huge amount of that waste that we so far are doing, you know, a mediocre job, not to your fault. It's really the fault, I think, of the corporations that have put us in this very hard position with materials that are hard to recycle, that are not recyclable, et cetera, have toxic materials in them. So we are trying to create an ecosystem where going forward, we can recycle more, have less to recycle ideally, and have a safer and healthier environment for the people working with those materials and their end life. But, you know, just to conclude, I would say we have such a solid base to build on. The DEP actually identified extended producer responsibility for packaging as a great opportunity for new producer responsibility law. So we were able to build off of what the DEP identified and what was going on in so many places, including Quebec, and learn from them in order to implement this. So we're out on a limb, but it's a very broad limb. It's very sturdy. We're going to be okay out there is how I feel. And that's why we were able to pass this law.
This morning, Susan Miller in her presentation touched on a lot of key aspects. Some of the time frame that we're up against, like the DEP is going to write the rule, and there's timeframes involved in that. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll touch on the timeframes. Can't read with my glasses on. So, yeah, so we were provided funding for positions, 2 positions to operate the program. The funding comes available in July of this year, in a couple months. So we are working right now to start the hiring process to get those people, those staff on board at that as soon as possible in July. And it's first thing they will be working on is stakeholder outreach and input. We're going to be responsible for the rulemaking for the program, but we are going to be relying heavily on developing and including stakeholders and all stakeholders, producers, municipalities, to make sure their input's heard. That's going. So the law actually has a date of December 31st to which we initiate rules to the board for rulemaking process. But as far as we're concerned, our rulemaking process is going to start in July to develop the stakeholder list and get stakeholder groups on board, get people going, and start soliciting input. And there is in the law, most of the rulemaking is routine technical, with the exception of a portion that deals with looking at drug container requirements. But in the law, there is some review deadlines and public hearing requirements that will be included. So then to go over continue the timeline. So that's December 31st of 23 for initiating rulemaking with the board. In the summer of 2024 is when we anticipate adoption of the routine technical rules and the provisional adoption of any of the major substantive rules that have to go to the legislature. The February 15th of 25 is when the first program update is due to the legislature. January of 25 is the submittal of major substantive rules to the legislature for approval. And then we anticipate spring, summer of 25 to finalize all rulemaking. And then fall of 25, issue the RFP for the stewardship organization. And that's something we can talk about later. And then, so the first producer payments for their packaging coming into Maine would be 26. And first payments to municipalities would be in 27.
Questions on that?
The fact that it's 5 years out before most consumers it gives producers 5 years to come up with less expensive to dispose of packaging and better, or do you think it's going to get ignored until last year?
I'll let you take that one.
I think it's easier for people who are elected to just take opinions than for people who serve in the administration. I don't know if it's because of this law. I don't know if anyone's been noticing this, but there are random things that I'm buying that the packaging is better. I think what we do know is that a lot of these corporations are already using different packaging in other places because they have to adhere to these sort of laws, like I said, as close to as in Quebec. So they may wait till the last minute to start phasing them in here until they're required to, but we know that the R&D is already happening or has happened. And I do see some of those, more forward-thinking corporations already coming into Maine with some better packaging, especially the really neat plant-formed packaging. Have you ever seen that? It's like paper, but it's in a special shape to meet the needs of the item. I've seen that a little bit more than before. Now, it could be a coincidence, could be because I'm just overly excited about this law. I'll say that, but and also there are, I think, a couple places, not to put DEP on the spot, where the timeline could end up tightening up, but I think we won't know till we get started. So I sort of see that as a longest case scenario, hopefully, for the implementation, because municipalities like the ones I serve need the help, on this kind of yesterday. They've been saying we're really having trouble continuing these programs with the volatility of the markets and adapting to it. And I know I have a lot of citizens who are really confused, like town by town, when things change within a town, or they move to another town and it's really different. So my vision, my hope is that over time, every municipality in Maine will have the same access to recycling. Everything will be more standardized. Maybe there'll be a lot more curbside recycling. I know in Quebec, 99% of citizens or residents have curbside recycling up there, and that's a pretty big province if you've ever gotten outside the urban areas. So sort of a long-winded answer to your question since I'm up here, but I guess that's what they pay me the big bucks to do. Yeah, so I think to your point, though, we'll see some shifts, but some of it, they might just wait because it's a matter of cost for them. Right now, the economic incentive is just do it as cheaply as possible, and we're shifting to do it better and we're putting the economic incentive there for better packaging. So they may wait until that signal comes in. Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I mean, I think if we all, continue to talk about this with the public, that awareness will grow for people. I think people kind of intuitively know that if a corporation isn't paying here, someone else is paying there. I don't know if they know that it's them or not. But I feel like awareness in my area is really strong because we've been working on this, in the legislature, but people have asked me to speak about it in my region quite a bit over the past 4 years. And so, people see me out and about and they're like, yeah, that's great. Like, good job on that law, but is that true in other areas of the state where, there hasn't been as much awareness? I don't know, but all of us who live all over the state and work for different communities can help people understand what this bill does. And it's got a complicated name, but when you say to folks like, taxpayers pay to get rid of trash that you had no choice in making, let's ask corporations to pay their fair share, people get it. And it's just a matter of getting that information out there. And I think people are pretty excited about it. The people that just regular people who have been washing out their containers, going to the recycling center and finding that there's no place to put it, they're pretty frustrated. So I think people are ready for a change.
Elaborate on that a little bit. The reason that I think our organization supported this is that most people think recycling it's good for the environment, right? That's why we do it. It's good for the environment. But those of us that are in this business know there's a financial component to that. And up until now, there's really only two ways a municipality can get paid to do recycling. Either taxpayers pay for the service, or we can get paid for the material if we can sell it and we can generate some revenue, which has always been tied to a very highly volatile market. Some years those markets are good, and some years, as we know, they're not so good. So the way I look at this is it's a way to kind of stabilize that a little bit. It gives us a foundation, hopefully a foundation of revenue that helps stabilize our programs so that we can continue to offer those, and we're not so dependent on a volatile market of, hey, what's cardboard paying, this month, this week, or this year, or however that goes. So, I mean, that's the kind of the way I've been looking at it. Whether people will actually make that connection or not that you're talking about, that it costs less, or, it costs a little bit more up front. It really comes down to municipal budgets and, the ability to keep bringing those programs to them and allowing them to participate with them, whether they really know how that works or not. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. So that was the perspective we came at it from, was, probably more so a financial one than anything. But, hopefully, again, it's all going to depend on how we were able to put it together and roll it out. But if it works like we think it's going to work, it'll provide us some much needed revenue to support all these programs at some basic level, if a municipality chooses to participate.
The program itself doesn't provide any financial, any kind of financial money to the producers to help them make better packaging. It's the program itself, and kind of in a nutshell, is producers pay a fee for the amount of packaging they bring in to the department, and that's based on, and then there'll be kind of incentives based on its recyclability and toxicity and that type of thing. But that fee is going to be based on the overall handling costs of that packaging material, and the costs are then reimbursed by the average cost for handling that packaging material is reimbursed to the municipalities. So it is kind of up to the manufacturers of products and the packaging manufacturers themselves to try and determine the best kind of packaging that they're going to need to use to basically lower their costs, not lower their costs, but lower their fee, right? How they can lower their fee. And that's kind of what it's incentivized for manufacturers to choose packaging that's easier to recycle, has a better market, has less volume, less weight, and less toxicity.
I can definitely try to tackle that. So what's fascinating is the corporations will, on the one hand, tell you that they're going to pass the costs on, but then they're also in a globally competitive market. What we know from looking at the actual cost of recycling or collecting these materials is that in most packaging types, it's fractions of a penny up to 4 pennies. Okay, so firstly, they could add that cost on, and that is within within the range of things that we don't notice as consumers. But secondly, a lot of other places, this question has been looked at very closely in Canada, because there are neighboring provinces that do and do not have this. And when certain provinces realized that their neighbor was paying the same amount for goods, but their recycling rate was about half as much, and it costing their citizens per capita the same or more for a worse outcome, they thought, oh, well, why wouldn't we do that? So I think it's really very small. And additionally, the research that's happened, they haven't really been able to track where those costs are being placed. Because yes, the corporations are not doing this generally out of their own, the goodness of their hearts, if you will. What the researchers think is happening is that those costs are being hid more in luxury items where people really don't notice them, where prices could fluctuate, $5, $10, $100, because these items are so expensive that they are sort of hiding these costs in these places. Hiding might not be the right word, but we just really can't find where they're coming to fruition because they are so small and only add up in the aggregate. But you're not going to see a lot of change, really any change, in the cost of goods at the grocery store, for instance, despite what one researcher in a not peer-reviewed article with no citations said, and it has been saying in multiple states in this country, despite being repudiated by actual researchers, including some of our own humane PhD materials waste folks who are like, this is a good bill, thank you.
Yeah, so the actual determination of how that cost is calculated will be discussed and determined during the rulemaking. So during that time period is when we'll develop rules that says this is how that cost is calculated. And then it's a good lead, and I mentioned the stewardship organization. So the department, as part of rulemaking, will develop an a request for proposal process, and the qualifications for such as part of the rulemaking to hire a stewardship organization that will then act as the operating entity of the program. They'll be the ones that handles like the day-to-day dealings with the producers, developing, working with them to get them to pay their fees, working with them to just participate in the program, maybe identify producers that should be participating and aren't, so there's no free riders. And also that organization will be working with municipalities and how to get their reimbursements and that type of thing. And again, the reimbursements to the municipalities will be the actual calculation for how that'll be determined will be during rulemaking that lays that out. And again, stakeholder process, so be involved.
Are you running for office, Lou? Well, I mean, I think, Lou, I think you raised a good point, and that's the point that we're making is if we can figure out another way to get the revenue in, so we don't have to raise the taxes and we don't have to depend on a market to finance these programs, then we can continue to do that. So you hit it right on the head. This might, we're hoping this is the answer.
It's not only recycling, construction, demolition,
Yeah.
debris, all these things. If those recycling facilities were here in the state of Maine, it would be cheaper for us to do a lot of things. Landfill, recycle, with. That's the problem. Everything has to go with other stuff.
So the law doesn't have anything to do with building, new recycling facilities in the state. I mean, it does provide, there is a provision that money will be used to help fund infrastructure to help with recycling of products in the state of Maine. But then again, it gets to to start with your original statement, it gets to the point of, yes, people stopped recycling because they had to literally pay for it. Well, so instead of making the municipality pay for that, we are going to make the producers pay for that through the fee. And that's the bottom line of this law.
I'm happy to try to chime in. I mean, this is a long-term problem that, we've identified. You said you've been working on it for decades. No one is going to build a facility if there isn't a steady supply of material. Okay, so you cannot create something that creates demand without taking care of supply. I think it is plausible that as the state of Maine situates its supply of recycled materials, because we are now universally collecting everything we can, it's materials that are easier to recycle, that the next step could be to build more facilities to do recycling. You can't do it all at the same time necessarily because, well, I'm not sure. Is building a facility to do the actual recycling something that we want the public sector to do or the private sector to do? These are questions we have at the State House all the time. Perhaps if we can take care of part of this in the public sector, a public-private partnership could come forward, the private sector could come up, but there is recycling happening in the state. I don't know if anyone lives in the Orono region, but did you see that they were asking people to drop off pizza boxes to the Nine Dragons facility there, the ND paper facility, because it's like the right kind of material that they needed to supplement what they were doing. Wouldn't it be great if they weren't putting out a press release saying, bring your pizza boxes, you Maine students, but we had an actual regular supply that could go to them. The Chinette paper facility that I think is Hutamaki, I believe they use partly recycled content as well. So it's not that it's not happening, it's that it's not fully developed. And I think that that's a great vision for the state. That's something that I'm excited about. I would like to get there, but we do have to create steady supply. And, in terms of the cost of trucking things, we know that it's expensive to truck stuff out of state compared to in-state. So maybe as we see the cost of these programs, the people that are actually making this packaging that need to or actually have their own goals to use recycled content, they might say, look, we're paying for the trucking. We'd like to not pay so much for trucking. Why don't we set up a facility in Maine because we need this content for our packaging? It is, like I used the word ecosystem, that is exactly what it is. And I hope that if we can get off the status quo, which we know is not working, to your point, maybe more innovation will happen and we will get to this better vision. It's like something I'd like to see, but not any one law can make that happen. So it's important that we have these conversations and that well-meaning or producers or for their own financial reasons will start to set up shop all over this country, right? Not just in Maine. We don't want I don't want stuff being trucked from New York to Maine to be recycled. I'd really rather everything be more locally managed. That's my opinion on it.
Well, I think that's, lack of a better phrase, that's the $1 million question, I guess. We don't know that yet. There's a process that the department's going to lead to figure out how the whole thing's going to work. So, and maybe Brian's a better person. I'll let him chime in here a little bit on what the law actually kind of directs us towards. But, and that's, I keep looking at you folks out here. We're going to need input from you folks that are like us that are doing this work to say, okay, yeah, this sounds good, but, or it sounds good and it is good. In some cases, it may sound good, but it's going to lead to this problem, or we're not going to be able to participate with that because of this. So there's a lot that still needs to happen. 4 years, I think you said, Brian, over the next 3 to 4 years. So there's a lot that needs to happen. I'm assuming MRRA is going to continue to maybe provide forums like this to talk about these things. And obviously the department's going to be soliciting that input. So I hope so. Well, uh, you know, ultimately, I hope we can kind of keep doing what we're doing, maybe get a little bit better at it, get some revenue in to support that, and then that will allow us to do more, and build, to get a little momentum going and then build from there. So I'll let Brian talk a little bit more about what the law actually says.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. So, so the law is, it's designed for municipal reimbursement of recycling costs. And so it's designed to, support what's there currently for infrastructure and help municipalities use their infrastructure they have now to recycle. And then, but there is also a part of the stewardship organization is going to do an audit of statewide systems. And they are also going to look at, there is going to be a funding mechanism to fund improvements in both education and infrastructure. So if, the audit comes out that we could really improve our recycling if we all had X, and then provided by, of course, once you get infrastructure, you need to teach people how to use it, then provide education. So then that the law does provide that type. So that's maybe when you'll start to see changes in how things are done, is when we start to look at funding infrastructure to help municipalities recover their recyclable material.
You're gonna do an audit of,
Existing.
is that an in-house audit or is that something that the MRA?
That's the stewardship organization is tasked to do that. And that's going to be, again, rulemaking is going to be a popular answer. So how the stewardship organization attacks that, whether they, it depends on this type of stewardship organization that gets hired. I mean, if they may have the in-house capability to do it, or they may decide to contract that out. So that's going to be, but I'm sure that doing that audit is going to include reaching out to the organizations that are already existing to see what their input is. It could be either or. It could be a new business that starts in Maine that develops the horsepower to do it. It could be one it works in the country, or it could be one that's already working worldwide, because like Canada has these programs, Europe has these programs. So I guess the bottom line is we're going to pick the most qualified organization to run it. So. Oh, yeah. So it's part of the law, is identifying similar municipalities for determining costs. So all that's going to be taken into account when we do the rulemaking for determining the costs. So yes, so there won't be just one price, one median price for everything. There's going to be, or one median cost, I should say, for everything. There is going to be, rulemaking to determine how municipalities are grouped together in a fashion that makes their cost review, probably not the best word, but their cost review similar so that they are getting lumped in with other municipalities in terms of determining the median cost that they're going to get reimbursed.
Yeah, and I would just add to that to say the reason that we did that is one, we know that not all communities in Maine are similar or or even close to similar. But to be fair to the producers in some way, we did want to have, instead of just each municipality gets completely reimbursed for their programs, well, I think they would do a good job keeping costs down. Not everybody does believe that necessarily. So we made these groupings, or this ability to do these groupings, so that municipalities would get reimbursed. What is the average cost in communities of your type? So communities that are being super efficient could actually make some money on this program. That would be an incentive for them to be lean and mean. And communities that, have said, we're okay with not being as efficient as possible in terms of our staffing or our trucking costs or things, they could end up paying a little bit more in. But what this does over time is hopefully move us toward the most efficient, lowest cost options. Now, I think those of you that are involved in this are probably already doing that because it's on the taxpayers right now. So I'm not extremely concerned that these programs are being run with a lot of fat, if you will, but this is the mechanism that we put in to help make sure that the cost would be fair also to the producers that are paying on the other side.
Just follow up too. I mean, like I said, it's a median cost. So there will be some municipalities that make because they're running lean, mean they're really efficient or whatever, and they're gonna get a reimbursed for more than what their actual costs are. But again, like, because it's a mean, there's going to be sums that get reimbursed at a level that's less of what their actual costs are.
Hey, what? Sorry, sorry, George. Just had a quick note. One of the things with this law that, that I took particular attention to, and it seems very basic, but when it was first drafted, is it's a voluntary participation by municipalities. This is not a mandate. This is, you're not being told from as a municipality, you shall do this. So it's each municipality is going to have to make a decision. They have to look at the requirements. What are we going to do? How do we have to manage this? What are the hoops we're going to have to jump through in order to get some revenue? And I look at that from my perspective every time a new law comes out. Is there an opt-out clause? Is there an option here to participate if we don't like what comes out? Again, we all keep saying it, to help drive what comes out of it being beneficial to you is, as much as possible, get involved with their process so that you can have a say in that, so that what comes out is beneficial to you. So, again, I just want to add that, if a municipality says, nope, we're good, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, that's fine. You don't have to participate, but you're not going to get any money either. So, I mean, those are decisions that everyone's going to have to be making at some point down the line.
At any time, and so no legislature can tell a future legislature what to do. But I do think that there is, there has been some bipartisan support for this. And certainly now that it's gone, going into rulemaking, I mean, it could be a target for sure, but it will sort of process. I mean, one of the big arguments in the debate on the Senate floor was, which type of rulemaking should it be? I don't know if they're going to backtrack it because they didn't, some people wanted major substantive, but they got routine technical. I mean, that seems pretty like, okay, we've moved on. Is how I feel. But you're right. I mean, any law could be undone at some future time. We are, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the funding is just for get the startup, but then is actually reimbursed by the producer. So it's true that in terms of a budgetary standpoint, it shouldn't be used to fill a need.
Right. So to sign a sound like a broken record, rulemaking, yeah. So the requirements for towns to what their reporting requirements will be determined during rulemaking. That being said, part of the stewardship organization's job will be to assist municipalities to help them participate. So it's kind of a be involved during rulemaking, and we don't want to make a bunch of, we don't want it to be complicated. So we want towns to take advantage of it. So we're not going to make it, we're going to make it as simple as possible. Take into everyone's input and developing that, and then make sure the stewardship organization is staffed up to provide real assistance to the municipalities to help them out. I think that's kind of I mean, in some ways, that's the benefit of being able to, have the stewardship organizations part of the bid say, you need to have this type of staff who can provide this type of assistance. So, yeah.
Right. I'm just thinking because like most.
Some of it will be this data that they're already submitting, but it's kind of be like maybe kind of data on steroids kind of thing. Yeah.
And they're auditing.
Yeah, there's as part of it, there's going to be audits going on, and also the law, if I remember correctly, actually takes in determining, the numbers also will take into account reports from those facilities. Yeah. Part of the fee the producers will pay will be based on their packaging system in its entirety. So it will take into account not just the box comes in, but the protective material that's put in that box to keep that item from breaking. So so then again, it should incentivize the producers to look at how they're packaging things and say, okay, I want to make this in a cheaper way. And again, I think it's back to something earlier was said too. I mean, yeah, so Maine and Oregon are the first two states in the country that has this. Colorado's bill is in this, just went through the House or something, that they might have one. And I think this is something that's coming down the pike in America. I think other states have been trying to do the same thing. So I think you're going to see in the next couple of years, a couple of other states get on board with this. So they'll start to standardize things as well.
It'll become commonplace here pretty quick.
I would think, yeah. Shipping, packaging, I'm 99% sure is the one thing that's not included, but it's, but like, for example, like if you buy water bottles, the water bottles themselves are not included because it's part of the deposit program. But if it's like in a shrink wrap, then that packaging of that beverage container is. But if it's for distribution, that's not included.
Yeah, the way that we've talked about that is business to business packaging is not included, but like business to consumer is what's included. But, you know, as we build up our systems, then I think some of that business to business material can benefit from that and can become part of it.
Well, to participate, one of the minimum requirements is that a municipality has to collect readily recyclable material. So if we determine a material is readily recycled, then that town, to get its reimbursement, will need to actually collect that packaging. Again, it's based, it's based, so how do I say this? It's based on their handling costs, which is, you know, their cost to receive it, do whatever, and sell it. So it's gonna be,
$40 a ton to recycle, or at least that's their cost, the justified cost. Somebody else might be $75 justified cost.
well, it gets back to the meat, so to determine again, we go back to the idea of we're gonna pay the mean cost of handling packaging material. So, you know, so a town, so once we develop that calculation during rulemaking of how we'll calculate the mean cost, then the town will get what we'll say, you know, this is my mean, they will get tonnage. So if they do X tons of whatever, they'll get that mean cost per ton. So they're getting their costs back. It's a reimbursement, getting your costs back, but not like a true reimbursement. You're getting the mean cost.
So if a transfer station adds a product or two or three to fit the bill, and start taking out some of the products, their cost for adding that person or that product would be reimbursed.
No.
You only collected newspapers and cardboard, but now all of a sudden you move into plastic and glass and all these other things. It's a different program. Are they gonna get that cost back?
Well, you're gonna get so if you're just collecting newspapers, but now you're collecting tons of this other material, you'll get the cost you'll get the mean cost for collecting all that extra material. You won't get specifically your specific cost for hiring that person to do X, Y, and Z, but you'll get something, yes. Right, yeah.
But you don't see big dollars, right? I mean, I guess that's my question.
The program is not meant to be like a cost center for a municipality in terms of, making a lot of money off it. It is meant to help municipalities keep these programs going at no additional cost to their taxpayers. And we're not thinking the municipalities want to like save their receipts, which is why we're doing more about tonnage and averages than we are, this was the exact cost to pay this employee who spent 3/4 of their time doing this and 1/4 of their time doing that. That level of granular detail is at some point, the law of averages sort of takes care of that, I think.
So can I add one thing? So the department's got a website. On the website, there's a EPR for packaging page. And on that page is an email address where if you click on it, you'll send us an email that says you want to be part of the stakeholder process, and you'll get all the emails about it. So go to our website, send us an email.